Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask that you bless our mayor and this council as they represent the people and our community of Pinehurst. We pray that you will grant them a spirit of wisdom, charity, justice, and good humor, so that with steadfast purpose they may faithfully serve in their offices as they consider the needs and concerns of our village. We thank you for the service and the time that they give to our community, and we ask that you bless each member of this council, staff, and their families. In your holy name, amen.
I'll ask everyone to please rise, and we're going to be led. The Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Holden Mathis, a second grader at Pinehurst Elementary School. Holden, you got that microphone handy?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Holden. Okay. Why don't we move on to reports? We'll get into the village manager. Anything you want to report on?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. Just a couple of things I'd like to mention. I'm pretty sure Patrick's going to be talking about the first SMPO meeting that we attended and participated in last Thursday. But I also wanted to call out the fact that we've now scheduled our first Transportation Coordinating Committee meeting for February 8th at 10 o'clock next door in the Jinsey Fallon Conference Room. The Transportation Coordinating Committee is made up primarily of manager or manager equivalents from the local governments that are part of SMPO, as well as some technical expertise from NCDOT and the Federal Highway Administration. The second thing I just want to comment on is that we've now received some good guidance from council with regard to moving forward on developing this coming year's SOP, and our senior staff will be formally starting that process tomorrow morning, when we'll be doing our kickoff meeting, where we're going to be passing along all that guidance to the folks that on the staff that will be building this thing up from the ground up. So that concludes my report.
Okay. A couple of things to mention. One, Jeff referenced the Sandhills Metropolitan Planning Organization did officially get off the ground with our organizational meeting. Taylor Clement, the mayor of Southern Pines, was elected chairman. And the mayor of Pine Bluff, his name is Ronald McDonald. Holden, that's his real name. And is a fine guy, and he's the vice chairman. So we have regularly scheduled meetings. I think it's once every third Thursday in the month or something like that. So from time to time, we'll be reporting back to village residents as this moves forward. Pinehurst is the lead planning agency, so there's a little extra responsibility that we as a village have, and the village manager and staff are setting up the organizational structure necessary. So we'll move forward on that. Today, I attended with the village manager and with Alex Cameron, our planning director, the Tri-Cities gathering with the mayors and staff from both Aberdeen and Southern Pines, and we discussed a variety of issues. One thing I will share with everybody is something that I found pretty fascinating, and that is that in the coming, I'm going to say 18 months, Southern Pines will be bringing online about 1,215 apartments, and 4 Starbucks, by the way. They shared that with us today. And Aberdeen has plans for over the next 2 to 3 years, probably 3,000 living units, of which 700 will be apartments. So we talk a lot about growth in the area, and attainable housing. So things are happening just in those areas of Aberdeen and Southern Pines. We, of course, recently approved, I think it was 68 new single-family homes in Pine Wild. So things are happening housing-wise across the area. And then lastly, myself and Jack Farrell and Barb Ficklin attended the Neighborhood Advisory Committee meeting, and it was a good meeting. Barb may go into a little more detail. We had a very good presentation on code enforcement, and it was well attended, which was very good. There are still some vacancies out there, very few left on, I think it's about 3 neighborhoods that need a representation. We're down to 2 neighborhoods. And there are some vacancies for alternates. So if you have an interest in participating in your village government, this is one way you can do it. And I really encourage citizens to get involved that way. I'll now turn to Dr. Morgan for any comments he'd like to make.
Yeah, a couple things here. We've got a meeting on the Central Pines Regional Council that'll be going on tomorrow. I'll be attending that for the village and reporting on that in February for it. Not sure if you all have had a chance to go inside to the desk, but the Pinehurst Activity Guide for the year is out, and from Parks and Rec. I encourage you to grab one and look around, because we are doing a lot more than just the open. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening. And provide that to your neighbors. We truly have a very vibrant community with a lot going on. I will say that I did learn one thing also, that our Fairborn coordinator, Holly Neal, she actually successfully completed the Leading for Results program at UNC. And there are only 25 people selected, and there was 170 different applicants. So kudos to Holly Neal on completion for that. We're real proud of her. In the activity guide, you'll see that we do have a Pinehurst St. Patrick's Day parade going on March 16th, and they also have sign-up forms out there. So if you want to celebrate your Irish, please sign up for that. And then you'll also see some stuff on there that Lydia Bosch brought up before, called Rock the Village, and being able to paint some of the rocking chairs and demonstrate some of the artists that we have in the area, but that'll be displayed during the open. But that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Taylor.
Last Thursday, I attended a session at Pinecrest High School that was a meeting put on by the Moore County Board of Commissioners. As some of you may be aware, they are reviewing their 2013 land use plan. And this was an attempt they made really no presentation. This was an attempt for them to listen to concerns of the public. 24 people spoke. I'm not sure that I would say this is an exact number, but I would say approximately 20 of them live in rural or agricultural space in Moore County, and spoke to the desire to make sure in whatever new land use plan comes out that those areas are preserved. There were a few other people. I would say the general tone of all 24, I'm not sure there's a more polite way to put this, but I would describe as anti-growth. In fact, Councilman Quiss, when the council did speak at the end, asked for a show of hands of how many people would say that they were concerned about growth in Moore County, and virtually every hand went up. There was also a proposal made by one of the other council members that they hold additional meetings like this, possibly in each of the high schools in Moore County, which I think is probably a good idea. And there will be a follow-up meeting this Thursday. I think it's at 2 o'clock at the Senior Enrichment Center. This will be where the commissioners will actually talk about what they heard. And I don't believe there's an opportunity for public comment there, but I plan to attend that and keep an eye on this in general going forward. Clearly, the mayor talked about the number of new housing units that are going to go up in our immediate vicinity, and this is very much a topic of concern. The only other thing that I would mention is anecdotal in nature, but I've had several friends seek me out to say that they are fans of the bollards in the traffic circle. A couple wondered how they're secured, and a couple thought that maybe they could be a different color, or maybe it could be a little more attractive. But in principle, I would say that the comments were all positive. That's it.
Good. Well, I'm sure someday we'll be testing how well they're secured, but we'll just let nature take its course. Barb Ficklin, please.
Thank you. As Pat mentioned, I attended with him the Neighborhood Advisory Committee meeting yesterday afternoon. We were treated to a presentation by Angel Smith and Alex Cameron, who I know is here. It was excellent. It was called Code Enforcement 101. And that is exactly what it was. Gave a lot of information about how much disinformation is out there around code enforcement, what actually constitutes a violation, some examples of things that don't constitute violations, what is the responsibility of the police in terms of enforcement versus code enforcement. So very, very helpful. I think we can look forward to correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, the council can look forward to a quarterly report, hopefully giving us some information on what all you've been accomplishing in the past few months. I would say that one of the most interesting parts of the conversation was the length of time that it takes to investigate some of these violations that are reported. And I think we become impatient waiting because we don't really understand all the steps that are involved in it. So very much appreciated it and look forward to whenever the reports come out.
Thank you. Councilman Farrell.
Thank you. I've been pretty much following people around for the last week, attending, or I wouldn't call it attending, more observing meetings such as the SMPO, which was very interesting. I think that organization has great prospects to help us with transportation issues. I will second what Barb said about the NAC presentation by Angel. It was fabulous. I wish we could get that message out to everybody about what is and isn't a code problem and so forth. It was staggering. That was 1,497 code issues, related issues in last fiscal year that were investigated and closed. It was really a effective, great presentation. Today I also sat in on the Central Pines Tri-Cities group meeting. As the mayor pointed out, it's staggering the amount of development going on in Aberdeen and Southern Pines, and we look like small potatoes compared to that, which I'm sure many residents will be happy about. But it's really very interesting to see all the development that's going on in Aberdeen and Southern Pines, and to the extent we can coordinate with them, that'll be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda, item 4. These are items that are considered routine or have been discussed at length in previous meetings and will be enacted by one motion. There's going to be no separate discussion will be held unless requested by a member of the village council. So this is the item of a motion to approve the consent agenda. So I'll ask if anyone wants to raise any issue, any council member, and if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve all the items listed and considered routine on the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? I hear none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. We have a motion and we've adopted it. That's the end of the consent agenda. Let's go to, now we need a motion to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 1 to discuss a rezoning request.
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 1.
Second.
Have the motion and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so be it. We were now into public hearing number 1. It's a rezoning request for 32.14 acres on Chicken Plant Road. Jeff, oh, I see him. Alex, okay. Alex Cameron, go right ahead and lead our discussion.
I will do so gladly. So thank you, Mayor Pizzella and council. Public hearing is to consider an official zoning map amendment, and this would be for a little over 32 acres of property further identified as Moore County parcel ID numbers 000170889 and 000245540. And this request would be to change the zoning classifications from R30, medium density conditional district, to R210, low density residential and light agricultural district. The property owner is Bass Design, and the applicant is Kenneth Bass of Bass Design. Again, the current zoning and land use, it is designated as R30 conditional, and is vacant, with one home now currently under construction has been permitted. The proposed zoning and land use would change that designation to R210, which is in largely the area in the ETJ in the southwest portion of our jurisdiction is all similarly zoned R210. And the development proposal would eventually be for 2 other residential homes, with the one that's under construction now, and lots that are 10 acres plus in size each. The minimum lot size in the R210 district is 5 acres, so it far exceeds that minimum dimensional requirement. And I just want to attest that the required public hearing was duly posted, adjacent owners were notified, and the hearing was published. So a little bit about zoning map amendments. There are two different types. I know some of you are very familiar with one of them, being the conditional zoning map amendment, which this is not. This is just a conventional or general use zoning designation, which means it's just a basic change in designation. No conditions can be considered or allowed, and all the afforded rights, uses, and special requirements or other development standards would apply. Conditional zoning allows for all kind of, depending on what the local ordinance would allow, conditions of approval to vary or impose further restrictions, and cannot be considered with this request. All the allowable uses in R210, again, if this request were to be granted, would be afforded, and no general concept plan would be required. It is a legislative decision and process, which does require the public hearing, which you're in now. And it does require, because of that process, that the Planning and Zoning Board also conduct a public hearing, consider the staff recommendation, as well as receive public comment on the proposal, and forward a recommendation to Village Council, as well as some sort of statement of consistency with the 2019 Comprehensive Plan. So you'll have that in your packet, and we'll discuss further. A little bit more about the request and background. This is actually a downzoning. This is a rarity. This rarely happens when considering zoning map amendments. What that means is this is actually going to a less dense, or the request is to take it to a less dense land development proposal. An exempt subdivision plat has been submitted, reviewed, and issued by the village for those 3 lots, and it is classified as quote-unquote exempt by North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 160D, 802, subsection 2, I believe, which basically says that any division of land into lots or parcels that are over 10 acres in size are considered exempt from subdivision regulations, and so therefore those regulations do not apply. So here's a layout of that exempt plat that has been, again, submitted, reviewed, and approved by the village. Kind of shows the 3 different tracks there. The one that is currently permitted and under construction is track 2, so the furthest to the back of this proposal and to the north, that directly abuts the Pine Wild area. A little bit more history on the subject property. So back in 2010, there was a request that came before the village, and the village council considered it and approved a conditional use zoning approval and a general concept plan, which you see laid out there to the right, to change the classification from R210 to R30 conditional and allow for 28 lot single family subdivision, which never got off the ground. And after several entities were involved and interested in the property, the current applicant approached village staff about getting the property and what options would be there, and eventually brought forth this request, which would actually revert the zoning district back to what it was originally. So here's a little bit better layout of the area and the adjacent uses and the adjacent zoning districts to the property. The map to the right, see the subject area is highlighted in red. The areas to the north and immediately to the east are included in Pine Wild subdivision. The areas to the south and just to the very extent of our planning jurisdiction to the west, all zoned R210, and just To the south and east, there's the property zone public conservation, which is the West Pinehurst Park. So again, all these land uses are very consistent with what the current zoning classification is, as well as what the requested classification would be. It is located within the village's ETJ, or extraterritorial jurisdiction. You access it through Chicken Plant Road coming off Linden, and it's again at the very end or the extent of our planning jurisdiction there to the west. All the requirements of the R210 district, including the uses and dimensional standards, are and have been met. There is no public water or sewer available at the immediate area, so the lots would be served by private well and septic. And there are no environmental constraints on the property, such as floodplains, wetlands, or environmentally sensitive areas for the red cockaded woodpecker. So something that's very important and needs to be highlighted when you have these conventional use designations or map amendments, and want to highlight the differences between the uses between the R30 and the R210 district. They're both geared towards single-family detached residential uses. They do differ, as shown here in this table, and a copy of which was also included in the staff report in the packet. You can see the R30 in the middle, that column's existing zoning, and what the R210 proposed zoning would allow that would differ from the R30. So a few of those would be the bed and breakfast, outdoor recreation facilities, religious institutions, the ability to keep agriculture, have livestock on the property, and all the way through. Anytime you see allowed with special requirements in the table of permitted and special uses in section 8.51 of the PDO, it would list if there are additional restrictions or standards that would have to be met if such right was proposed. So the 2019 comprehensive plan, statutorily, there's a requirement that when the governing board's reviewing one of these map amendments that you consider the adopted comprehensive plan. So what we have here is a snip of the conservation and growth map in the 2019 comprehensive plan, which highlights the area as a suburban neighborhood. The area all around it is classified as rural. And again, the request would be consistent with both that designation as well as the rural designation in the area surrounding. Furthermore, the comprehensive plan has guiding principles, and staff believes that this request would also be quite consistent with guiding principle 2 and guiding principle 3. Planning and Zoning Board held their public hearing earlier this month, at January 4th regular meeting, and they, after holding the hearing and receiving, I believe, 1 or 2 comments from the public, they unanimously recommended approval of this request and found it to be consistent with the comprehensive plan as stated in the official forwarded recommendation to you guys, which was included in your packet. And to conclude, the staff recommendation would be that based on the analysis that we prepared, you've seen with the adjacent land uses and with the history of the property, as well as what the comprehensive plan says, that we do recommend the Village Council approve this rezoning and adopt some statement of consistency, which can be included in the draft ordinance, which has been prepared for Village Council and their consideration in the following agenda item. So the council's actions and their options, after conducting the hearing, if you decide that additional information is needed or some items have not been addressed, you can consider to continue the public hearing to a time or date certain. If that is not necessary after the hearing is over and you move to adjourn, you can approve the request by ordinance and make some statement of consistency or inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. You can deny the request and make a statement of inconsistency with the plan, or you could also decide to defer the decision to a council meeting date in the future. And that would conclude the staff's presentation.
I'll ask council if they have any questions they'd like to pose to Alex.
Alex, you listed on one of the slides under the new proposed zoning that there are certain things that are permitted with special requirements. To the extent that anyone who acquired one of those lots wanted to pursue one of those, does that require a special use permit and therefore would come back before us?
It would not require a special use permit. It would just have to, there are objective standards, and they would just deal with planning staff.
And this is, as you said, upzoning from I think, 1 acre minimum to 5 acre minimum. That's
Correct.
part of the proposal.
Yep, or down zoning, is it?
Down,
Yep.
right, thank you.
For Jack, any questions for Alex? Okay, hearing none. In order to change this, if we take this action and improve it, and if in a few years there's a new owner or there's the current owner has a change of mind, would he be required to come back through this process, through the Planning and Zoning Board and the council to change it, or does he have some inherent ability to just change it?
If it were to be a zoning map amendment, it would have to start this entire process. So if this approval were granted, anything that's afforded at that time in the development ordinance for the R210 district, they're allowed by right. Anything that would run afoul of that, there would have to be another process, either to change the zoning classification, this process again, or to request some other type of relief, such as through a variance, which has its own other process.
All right. Go
Just-
ahead, John.
Is the applicant required to state any intended use? Is that required, or
Nope, they would be afforded every allowed use that's listed in the ordinance.
have they stated any intended use?
The three single-family detached lots, my understanding is that, and I do know that the applicant, it is here and would be, available to comment or to answer questions of the council. But, again, one home's under construction, which I believe the intent is to be their personal residence, and the other 2 lots will be sold for future owners to decide.
Okay. Well, then, why don't we not adjourn the public hearing, number one, and maybe does anyone have any comments they'd like to make on this as opposed to questions to Alex? No.
I'll just say I appreciate the Planning and Zoning Board, the work they've done on this, and I think they came with a good document, and their recommendation is to allow this to occur. So I appreciate their efforts.
I'd like to see this proposal. I think it's in the direction of what we think should go on in ETJ.
Yes. I can share that I was at that Planning and Zoning Board meeting, and one of the members there indicated that in her many decades as a planner, she could count on maybe one hand a down zoning request, and she found it very interesting and admirable. I went back and watched the videotape to hear her words. And I too, as you, one, that particular part of our world, the Pinehurst world, there are other horse farms or larger than 1 acre development. So it complements what's going on in a lot of the neighbors' location there. And two, it's somewhat similar to what we saw recently in neighboring Foxfire, where they did some rezoning from small lots to larger lots. So I do find this to be very consistent with a lot of the thinking now, and very complimentary to the developer or the property owner, Mr. Bass, for his efforts here. So I too intend to vote for this. Any other comments, Barb or Jack?
It's already been said.
Okay. Then I'm ready to, actually, I guess we can adjourn the public hearing so that then we can,
Yep.
yes. Yes, it is. Go. Hold on a second. Well, I know we have a public comment period later.
We-
It's a public hearing.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, that's right. That's fine. Come forward. Yes, Mr. Geddes.
Thank you for the opportunity to say something. My name is Bruce Geddes. I live on Bowman Road in the Pinehurst ETJ. I'm a short walk, and you can see my farm on some of the slides. I'm a short walk from the property under consideration. I fully and completely applaud Mr. Bass, the Planning and Zoning Board, and this council, should you approve this action. This is entirely consistent with the neighborhood. We bought our land in 2015. We built our farm 17 acres in 2016. We've been praying for people to do this. what Mr. Bass is proposing. Now, Mr. Taylor, I'd like to maybe correct a misperception just a little bit. I'm one of the speakers at the Thursday meeting with the county commissioners, as have been a couple others in the room. We're not anti-growth, not at all. This is the kind of growth that's perfect for our ETJ. There's 30 acres now, that could be horse farms. Depends on what the owners want to do, but this paves the way for them to develop horse farms just like mine and many others. If they do develop these 3 parcels into horse farms, that brings an even dozen horse farms to my neighborhood. I call that critical mass. Now, we have a couple thousand acres to go. The ETJ is pretty big. And I encourage you to not only approve this application, but to promote this. Go back to the comprehensive plan, the 2019 plan. Consider updating that plan. Get the conservation neighborhoods out of that plan for the ETJ and promote exactly what Mr. Bass is proposing. That's good for Pinehurst. It's good for the residents in the village. It's good for the residents in the ETJ. It's good for everyone. So this is good growth. We're not anti-growth. This is the kind of growth that we call, and I would call, good growth. I brought a copy of my email to you all. I sent this yesterday. I trust you've had a chance to read it. I'd like to enter this into the record if I could give it to
Sure.
the clerk. Thank you.
Does that conclude your statement, Mr. Geddes? Okay, thank you, Mr. Geddes. All right. Are we ready to re-enter the regular meeting? And then we can take a vote.
I move to adjourn public hearing number 1 and re-enter the regular meeting.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. We are back into the regular meeting, and is there any more discussion on ordinance 24-03? No. Hearing none, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve ordinance 24-03, amending the official zoning map for approximately 32.14 acres of land located off Chicken Plant Road, currently owned by Bass Design and Development LLC, and further identified by parcel ID number 000-17089 and 000-24540 from R30 Conditional Residential District to R10 Residential District. This rezoning will be consistent with the 2019 Comprehensive Plan in that the rezoning will serve to protect the rural nature of our ETJ and conserve and the focus area denoted in that area.
Second.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay, the motion is adopted. Thank you very much. Let us go to, I guess we need to recess the regular meeting and enter public hearing number 2 now to deal with the petition for voluntary annexation in the Pinehurst South cottages. So I will entertain such a motion.
I move to recess the regular meeting and enter into public hearing number 2.
Okay, second.
Second.
Second, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. So noted. We are now in public hearing number 2. I guess, out there, you're still there. Okay. I'm just going to look over there for you. You're right there. The purpose of this public hearing is to consider a voluntary annexation petition for about 14.263 acres of land located in the village's ETJ east of North Carolina Highway 5, fronting on Blake Boulevard and Olivia Lane, currently owned by D.R. Horton, Inc., and further identified by Moore County parcel ID numbers 000-46287 and 202-00387. Okay. Alex.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a petition for voluntary annexation, which has been submitted to the village staff by the current owner and has been certified by the village clerk. The current zoning and land use for the property, for those of you not aware, it is zoned R5, so it's a high-density residential zoning. And the proposed development will be for a 38 single-family residential subdivision and has been preliminary plat approved by Village Council previously. To orient everyone, on the left-hand margin of that map is Highway 5, Blake Boulevard to the north as it comes around the post office area and near the nursing home there. Access to the subdivision is from the north off Blake Boulevard down through the southern portion. And I'll have a different map that'll show the layout of the subdivision, which again was previously approved. The public hearing was duly posted. Notices were carried out and the hearing published in accordance with general statutes. A little bit about what the general statutes allowed. This is what is considered a contiguous annexation. This map better illustrates the subject property in relation to the current corporate limits of the Village of Pinehurst. The green shade there being the existing corporate limit. So again, it shows that it is a contiguous annexation. And that the owner's agent is also required, or the owner's agent has submitted the petition for voluntary annexation, and again, has been certified by village staff. That's pretty well the checks and balances that have to take place before getting the hearing scheduled and getting the request before village council for your consideration. So again, about 3 years ago, village council approved a preliminary plat, image depicted to the right, of the 38-lot single-family residential subdivision. The required infrastructure is still being installed. It's largely complete. That infrastructure is being reviewed and inspected by our technical review committee. Once the infrastructure is fully in and complete and been inspected for compliance with all applicable codes by the village technical review committee, a final plat may be approved, and that's what will ultimately create all those lots and be recorded with the Register of Deeds. We also have an interlocal agreement with our neighbors in the town of Aberdeen. We had adopted both jurisdictions in 2010, an annexation agreement, which basically sets forth some parameters and areas in which if the petition for annexation occurs within our jurisdiction, is shown that which jurisdiction can decide to annex certain properties, and there's also a notice period. So per that agreement, we did notify the town of Aberdeen staff in December, and the town of Aberdeen decided to waive that 60-day notice period before action by the appropriate governing board, and had no objections to the annexation. So you can see on the map with the annexation agreement there to the right, the subject parcels are included in shaded light green, which says the Village of Pinehurst, both jurisdictions agree, can accept the petition for voluntary annexation. So a little bit about some of the benefits and considerations for annexation, probably on both sides for the current property owner and future residents, as well as the local municipality. Again, the strictly governed by North Carolina general statutes, as most everything we do. The process is the same for all municipalities, I believe, coming sometime around circa 2013. New laws came into play. It's at the sole discretion of the property owner. So the property owner holds the key to the future if they decide to petition for annexation. And the approval or acceptance is totally up to the governing board. No annexation requires that any future development plans or, there's a consideration that we're going to approve anything. It's just you're approving the boundary adoption. So for the municipality, there's increased tax revenue and also some grant opportunities. Also, what is important to a lot of the local communities is this also invokes the ability to enforce the municipal code regulations as the property would come into the corporate limits. So these are your police powers, your general welfare. So we would also then have services for police, fire, solid waste that would be afforded to those residents. And there's also, depending on how the ETJ jurisdiction plays out, you're limited to extraterritorial jurisdiction on a swath of where your corporate limits are for. So the more your corporate limits extend, the way the statutes are currently, you have the ability for more area in ETJ.
Can I get you to expand on that? I'm not quite sure I totally grasp the potential for ETJ expansion. If approving this, we are going right to our Pinehurst corporate limit that abuts Aberdeen. So where does the potential ETJ expansion?
So this is a general benefit potentially for annexations. So not necessarily just tailored to this request. This is just a general slide of what could benefit the property owner, future residents, and well as the municipality.
Okay, it's not
We're up against our boundary with
We're there.
Aberdeen and up against
We're there.
CCNC, I think.
Mm-hmm.
right.
That's right.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Another important part is roadway maintenance and exception, or dedication and exception, which is a big player in this request, is the roads in the subdivision have long since been intended to be dedicated as public rights-of-way, and ownership and maintenance handed over to the Village of Pinehurst, which we wouldn't consider until a few steps are taken, one being the annexation, two being the installation of the roadway to be compliant with our standards, and then a withholding of the final lift until at least 75% of the homes were to receive a certificate of occupancy. And then final lift of asphalt can be installed, inspected, and then there'll be a process for complete acceptance by the village council. So to conclude what the council's review and actions opportunities are, again, we've received the application. It's been in the works for 3 years now. It's been widely known that this process was going to come before village council for consideration. The village's technical review committee has been highly involved in this project, and everything is tracking accordingly to plan. Any changes in the development proposal would still have to follow whatever process were in play. This has no future approvals on any development in that area if it were to change. You have to hold a public hearing and receive public comment on the proposal, assess the desirability of the local municipality, and after conducting the hearing, you can accept to amend the corporate limits by ordinance, and it can be made by simple motion. And obviously, staff would recommend that the village council accept this petition for voluntary annexation and approve the corporate limit boundary.
Let me pose 2 questions. The Olivia Road, is that currently a dirt road or a paved road?
Neither.
It's neither. What kind of road is it? It's a gravel road? Okay. Upon completion of this process, is that something we would pave as the Village of Pinehurst?
It's separate from this request. What we would consider to do review with Olivia Lane is the only use for Olivia Lane as it relates to this subject property is that the village has an agreement with the railroad to access this property from Olivia Lane for emergency services only, the same as we do to the rear gate there at CCNC. When this proposal was first going through the preliminary plat approval at the time, the regulations have since changed, but at that time, if you're proposing a residential subdivision with, I believe it was 30 or more homes, a second emergency access had to be provided. That threshold has since changed to 100. So there was a code requirement that necessitated a second emergency access there off Olivia Lane.
Okay. I'll jump to my other question, which is R5. What is R5 translate into square footage or acreage? What is that usually?
Minimum lot size of 5,000 square feet, single family detached.
5,000.
And I believe the smallest lot in the Pinehurst South Cottages subdivision is 6,600 square feet. And they go a little bit, that's the smallest, and they range up to probably close to, there might be some that are 8,000 to 10,000 square feet in size.
That's the lot.
Correct.
Okay, not the house. Okay. I'll see comments or questions from other members of the council. Dr. Morgan? John?
If I did the math right, it's 14 and a quarter acres and 38 homes is an average of 3/8 of an acre. Does that sound round numbers correct? They're not all that size, but.
Yeah, I would trust your math. Yeah, obviously the layout is such that where some are very similar, but, whereas a couple of the cul-de-sacs are, some of the lots there on the end of the cul-de-sacs are a little bit larger. And there's some common area too. The entrance there off Blake Boulevard, there's not any residential lots until you get substantially further down into the subdivision. One lot's a pump station lot serve the sewer needs of the residential area. And there's, stormwater control measures and stuff that are platted as common area as well.
Obviously, this approval, if granted, has nothing to do with the homes that might ultimately be built there. That would be a separate approval. I mean, not even, it could be a staff approval based on code and what have you.
It would be. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Planning and zoning, will they weigh in on that as they did with Pinehurst South?
They did during the preliminary plat approval. Yep.
Thank you.
Barb? Jack Farrell.
The detailed map shows the boundary of this annexation to be on the south side of Olivia Lane. Is that correct?
I see the boundary survey as showing that, that dashed line, if you just faintly make it out if you know where you're looking, to be where the limits of those lots in CCNC are that are to the south. That would be the northern boundary. That's the way I read the boundary survey.
But with this annexation, we will be annexing the primary two parcels. And we will also be annexing those property that surrounds the two, which will be islands, if you will, non-annexed parcels. Is that correct?
Could you show that on the map?
Well, if you look at the map on the lower left side, you'll see the two squares there. Those are existing houses, and those properties are not part of this annexation.
Oh, that one and that one. Oh, okay.
Okay.
And that's Olivia right below them, right?
Olivia Lane is below them, correct.
Okay.
They are the only two houses on Olivia Lane. So when we annex, we will be creating two islands, not unusual. We have a few of those in the village, like Moorestown and so forth.
To be clear, Olivia Lane is not included in this annexation.
I went and looked at the plat after we discussed earlier, and again, I think this is the boundary survey that's been prepared by the surveyor. It follows this line, and again, as you said, it skirts these existing developed residential properties there that front on Olivia. This dashed line here is the limits where it's to the rear of those lots in CCNC. This dashed line here indicates, according to the survey, where the town of Aberdeen's corporate limits extend to.
Oh,
The detailed survey indicated that the line between Aberdeen and the village of Pinehurst is on the southern side of Olivia Lane, but you're saying that we're not annexing that part of it. Is that correct?
That's the way I view it.
Not included.
Okay, so we're annexing up to, but not including Olivia Lane.
Yep, so to your
that-
comment
that-
about the island here with these two residential lots,
Well, they won't be
The-
islands any longer.
this strip
won't
will be included with that.
And it's still, I think, very uncertain who actually owns that stretch of
No,
Olivia
we've been
Lane.
through that
Yeah.
for
There
many
may
years.
not really be any owner.
so,
Right. Okay, so that clarifies it in a great deal, in that we are not annexing part of Olivia Lane. We are annexing up to, but not including Olivia Lane. Okay, that solves a lot of issues that I was curious about.
is Olivia Lane therefore part of Aberdeen?
You'll have to ask Jeff on that one.
It appears, based on the information we're looking at, that when they annexed that parcel to the south, at least what's showing in GIS, they also annexed the portion of Olivia Lane that's adjacent to it. I don't know what that was based on or what the justification was, because I think everything that we had heard up to that point and everything we know about Olivia Lane is that there is no documented owner.
Okay.
So
But this doesn't
that stretch
affect
of Olivia Lane in GIS depicts it as being part of Aberdeen. I don't know if that's actually the case.
Well, regardless, we use Olivia Lane as the
Access.
emergency access to CCNC. And the developer is building a stub road which goes almost to Olivia. In fact, I was there the other day. It's almost to Olivia Lane, which could serve as another way. If we can't get across the railroad tracks, we could come in that way and get to our rear entrance to CCNC.
Are you talking about Arnett or?
No, not
The
a
parallel one?
Out of this development, there's a stub road that's already been paved all the way up to that. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
that's right, yes.
Where is the railroad track on this?
Oh, it's off the map on the left.
Okay, all right. Okay.
That clarifies it a lot by saying that we are annexing up to, but not including Olivia Lane. That clarifies a lot for me, at least.
And part of the process for the certification, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Shannon and Pam for their work. There's a robust set of checklists and folks that have to be notified, that, the Secretary of State's office is notified, the Moore County GIS is notified, and they haven't highlighted that as anything that, at least yet, that we know of, that might create any issues with how the previous annexation with with the town of Aberdeen.
Sounds like a topic for another day. Right.
General question, if we go ahead and approve this, what are the next steps that occur around this land once we approve this?
For this particular subject property?
Yes.
Okay, so there's still a few steps. Again, the Technical Review Committee been inspecting. We have received an application for a final plat. We've issued comments on those. There's a few more items related to the required infrastructure that's going to have to still be installed before that final plat can be approved. However, once that happens, we sign off on a final plat. The plat's recorded with the Register of Deeds. That creates all those lots. And at that point is, in conjunction with that point, remaining items such as the final lift, the owner and developer can give us a financial guarantee for an engineer's cost at 125% for what that final lift would be. The lots can then have individual permits submitted for and issued so the lots can be built on. And at that point, we get to 75% of those lots have received a certificate of occupancy. So there's actual occupants living there. The final lift can be installed, and then we'll go and do another inspection. And then when we get to that point is when the owner can actually offer and dedicate the roadway to the village, and then the village can accept the roads if they chose to.
And again, maybe just to be clear, because this is an approved subdivision already, all of those steps are going to occur whether or not you approve this annexation, except to the specific items related to dedication of the roads.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for us to, unless there's any public comments.
There may be some public comments, who knows?
Are there? I didn't see anyone else signed up on that sheet, no. That's why.
I move to adjourn public hearing number 2 and re-enter the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Let's take that as none. We are now back into the regular meeting. Does anybody have any further discussion for the regular meeting on this topic among the council members? No. Okay. So we have then discussed and considered ordinance 2401. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 2401, a petition for voluntary annexation of approximately 14.263 acres of land located in villages extraterritorial jurisdiction east of North Carolina Highway 5 along Blake Boulevard and Olivia Lane, currently owned by D.R. Horton Incorporated and further identified by parcel ID number 0004627 and 202000387, with said land hereby being annexed and made part of the village of Pinehurst as of June 30th, 2024.
Okay. We have a motion.
Second.
Second. Motion second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay. So adopted. We can now move on to item 13.
Okay, well, Dana moves forward. I guess I can tee this up a little bit. This is related to our designation as the lead planning agency for SMPO. I know council is aware of the fact that in that role, we'll be handling all the finances for SMPO. Our finance department will be handling all the accounting for that fund that supports the SMPO. And because the majority of those funds are coming from state or federal sources, they come with specific requirements that have to be met when we spend that money. And so we have a need to update our purchasing policy to ensure that we are adhering to those state and federal requirements. Go ahead, Dana.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So the village has two purchasing policies, basically. One that applies if the village's funds are being spent, and the second one, this one, that applies when federal funds are being used, whether in whole or in part, In the case of the SMPO, it's primarily federal funds, but we do have the local match requirement that's being met by the member dues in the SMPO. Since the council will be seeing in the coming meetings over the next couple of months, multiple kind of agreements and things that will need to be approved related to the SMPO, one of which is going to be the Lead Planning Agency Agreement, or LPA agreement, which will be between the village as the lead planning agency and the SMPO. And as part of that agreement, one of the key provisions is that the SMPO will follow nearly all of the village's adopted policies, including purchasing. That helps make it simpler for the SMPO. They don't have to write and adopt their own policies, and it will also improve consistency for the village staff that are processing transactions on behalf of the SMPO as the lead planning agency. So with that, I reviewed our existing federal purchasing policy, knowing that's the one that the SMPO would need to follow going forward. I wanted to make sure that it's up to date, with the current federal requirements, and that it would meet the needs of the SMPO's purchasing. As far as primary differences between our village funds purchasing policy and this one, it really just adds an extra layer of complexity. Our regular village policy is primarily based on the state statutes that govern procurement, and the village has opted to include some more stringent requirements within that policy. When it comes to the federal funds, we now have that extra layer of balancing and figuring out between federal, state, and our local village policy what requirement is actually in effect. They can conflict at times, and we're required to follow the most stringent of those requirements. So in reviewing the policy, the revised version that I recommend includes a few key updates. One is just some simple updates to the CFR references. For example, in the previous version, section 200.326 was the final section in the procurement, and now it's 327. Not major changes, but just making it consistent with the current CFRs. I did add items under the policy section that more clearly define a micro purchase, the micro purchase threshold, and micro purchase is the federal term for a procurement that does not require competition. Basically, if it's under that threshold, you are not required to get informal quotes or bids or anything like that.
What is that threshold now? Is it 25,000?
The federal threshold is 10,000.
10,000.
But this year, or not this year, but since the original version of the policy was adopted in 2020, the federal requirements now have added an option for grantees to elect to use a higher threshold. There's a few different options that they can choose from in terms of setting that threshold, one of which is they can follow their state procurement threshold that also, under which they don't require competition. In North Carolina, that's 30,000. The policy does recommend that we adopt that we function with the policy that way, using that higher threshold of 30,000. To do that, it just requires documenting annually what that threshold is. That does not need to go to council for approval each year, just an internal memo. I have in the policy that the financial services director would be responsible for documenting that annually at the beginning of the fiscal year. For this year, if this is change is adopted, I would do that now upon adoption of the policy, and then again in July at the beginning of the new fiscal year.
To put all this in perspective, and Jeff Sanborn, you probably will remember the numbers. The size of the budget for the MPO is something very small, and our contribution itself is very small. Am I right?
If I recall correctly, we can expect that the annual budget is going to be something on the order of about $250,000. And our contribution was like
17?
Our
10,000?
individual contribution as
The
the
village.
village, I think it's like 15,
17,000?
somewhere between 15 and 20,000.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, I just want to
Um,
keep it in perspective that it's
yes, and-
largely other funds rather than our own.
correct,
Yeah, okay.
correct. And that budget will grow over the years for the MPO as additional grant funds are received and we become eligible for them. I did consult with Doug Willardson on, should we take this election and have the higher threshold for SMPO primarily? It would also apply to any village federal grants that the village receives directly. There are very few of those. Every now and then, typically the police or fire department may get one for purchasing a specific piece of equipment, but we don't have many of those. But it would apply to any village federal grants as well. But the SMPO will be the primary entity utilizing it. And the majority of the purchases and contracts, I think that the SMPO would be larger contracts that probably are above that $30,000 threshold anyway. But at least anything below that, there is always the option for the staff person that is procuring the item to get informal quotes or something, even if it is below that threshold, but at least from a federal compliance standpoint, we would be fine in terms of an audit.
Thank you.
I also added the definition for a simplified acquisition threshold. Again, that's a federal term. Basically, anything over that is when competitive bidding is required. That was more just to add clarity to those terms that are used. The other key item that I added to the policy is here, a matrix of the requirements based on the contract type, what you're purchasing, and the different thresholds, the estimated cost of the contract, so you can determine which procurement method is required. And then this helps you determine which method you need to use, and then below are the detailed procedures based on whether the matrix told you no competition is required, it's a small purchase, or competitive bidding is required, et cetera. The specific procedures in the 2020 policy have a lot of redundancy because basically every possible combination from the matrix is detailed out with bullet points, which some of it is repetitive. So this, I think, consolidates and simplifies that information. But in terms of the actual procedures themselves, not much had changed from the prior version. But since others will be utilizing it and will be referring to it more often, just wanted to make some updates.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
And this may be better, Jeff, for you, or Dana, but either one. The SMPO's really just gotten off the ground, but would you see as it develops that it could be issuing, making purchases or issuing contracts in excess of these numbers?
Yes. I mentioned earlier that, based on information we got several months ago, we thought the annual operating budget would be, a little more than $200,000. At last week's SMPO meeting, for example, we were briefed on grant funding opportunities associated with transit. It would be significantly larger than that, even just for our MPO. So if we got to the point of trying to fund a transit system for Southern Moore County, for example, there would be bigger pots of money to deal with.
And were that to develop, as the lead, I'm trying to understand the amending a Pinehurst resolution relative to spending these funds, which are federal funds and are not directly controlled by us, but would be at the discretion of the organization, which includes other people. I understand that correctly?
That's right. So all the decision-making with regard to how to spend that money would be made by the SMPO governing board, and it would be our staff just executing the bookkeeping.
Okay, and that's why we need to adopt this, because they'd be
That's right.
negotiating contracts or whatever it is.
Yep.
And Pinehurst is on that board, so.
Right, of course. Thank you.
Okay. I gather there's no other additional discussion here, so I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve Resolution 2406, amending the purchasing policy and procedures with federal funds, financial policy of the Village of Pinehurst.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor indicate aye.
Aye.
None opposed, hearing none. The resolution is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let us move on to other business. I'll ask, we'll start with Councilman Dr. Morgan. If you have anything in particular you want to raise, either
Not at this time,
at this
no.
moment or for future, okay. John Taylor?
Not at this time, no.
Barb?
But not at this time.
Jack Farrell?
Good, thank you.
Okay. All righty. I have no other business for this meeting, but obviously we can go forward later and discuss about future business that we may want to add. I see no other sign up for individuals who want to comment for the public period here. So if there's any attendee that has not signed up but now would like to, please come forward. Seeing none? All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn, and we can take a break and then reconvene for the work session.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting.
Second.
Okay? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned from the regular meeting.